Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to another fantastic evening of fun and conversation with another art collector. And it's a long overdue conversation, so long overdue that I thought I must have talked to him in an interview at least 3 years ago. But it just shows you how often I've been on camera with this gentleman for in the last 2 years. But apparently I've never done it. So let's get to Mr. Jeff Dunn in the studio. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Billy. Yeah, I said it does feel weird. I think that if anybody is on the internet and collects comic book art and watches any of these shows, I think you and I cover about 80% of the FaceTime.
Right, exactly. Even when we weren't on camera together, just watching you on the 4C channel as often as I have, I feel like there had to have been an interview in our past. So it was a little shocking when you told me that, that we hadn't. But it's made me go back and look, because there's probably many other people who I thought I've had interviews with, and I really just maybe had them on briefly for a 10-minute segment here or there, or there was a collective conversation. So I apologize, but we're going to fix that tonight.
No. Once again, I always thought, when Larry asked me to be on his collector's conversation a couple weeks ago, I was like, that's like two of me in 1 month on comic art. I'm like, that's just way too much me to be out there all over. So yes, Jeff, the Jeff Army, we are representing
Jeff Army. Yes, and I did get a haircut. Maureen wants me to get it cut again tomorrow. So you don't know, who knows what it'll look like tomorrow after that happens. But like being like my mom, I think she's going to take me by the hand and take me back to the place where I got a cut and make me do it all over again, because I can't do it on my own, apparently. Yeah. Anyway, so Jeff, I mean, I have to tell you, I want a spinner rack, man. One day, a spinner rack will be mine. I've got room for it.
Listen, Anthony's Collectibles. It's crazy. We were driving back from a show, and Ken and I were together, and we had a whole bunch of stuff, and we stopped off at Anthony's, and I started making some deals with him, and then we were in there, and I was like, well, instead of money, I was like, you got two of those back there, and we had the van, and I threw it in the back, and it probably drove Ken nuts, because you know what these things sound like.
Oh yeah.
So the whole ride back from New York to Virginia to drop it off with me, it was creaking in the back and forth. But yeah, probably and I got a lot of art that year, and it was a couple of years ago. Probably my favorite pickup from that entire year was getting a spinner rack.
Well, one of these days, Anthony says, if he ever has like extra doubles of stuff, he might consider letting me have one. But yeah, no, I want one. Everybody should have one.
Oh yeah. It just brings it all together. I mean, it's even got the comic top with the Richie Rich and the Spider-Man and the Archie and Superman on it. It's just the one you remember from a kid, So when he was willing to let it go, I was like done. I was like, I want it, and I just been filling it up with dollar books, anything I can find it, just to throw in there to make me feel like I'm a kid again,
Sure. You got a few X-Men in there, Paul Smith.
Oh yeah, I got it. Depending on what you're looking at, I try to mix it up. I even got a DC one. I know this one's not going to mean that much to you, but I do have a DC.
Never Green Lantern and Batman. No idea. Azrael. As long as it's only on 1 out of 3 sides, you're doing all right.
It is. It is only on 1 out of 3 sides.
Depending on who you're interviewing on 4C.
Absolutely.
Oh, that reminds me. What did I? Well, I'll tell you what. When I'm showing a slide, so nobody can see me like rifling through a stack of artwork, I got a piece of art that either you or Ken have to buy. Oh. And it's so weird that you won't believe it when I show it to you. It truly is. Truly is strange. So, but you have to wait. It's going to be at the second half of our show when we're looking at artwork. So we might as well just go back to the beginning. I mean, obviously, you're working with Ken for quite a while. So, but prior to all of that, how did you get into comics originally?
Well, I mean, as any kid was in the in the 80s, that's what you did. You bought comic books. It was like, before the internet, it was before everything. It's where you got your entertainment from. Your Saturday morning cartoons. You watched the Incredible Hulk on at night with Lou Ferrigno, and you bought comics. And so I just, like any other kid, my brother and I collected comics. We loved comics. They put a comic book store somewhere close enough to where our parents would drive us there.
It
we
was the
just
actual
collected.
comic book store. It wasn't the
Mhm.
drugstore or.
Well, we had that too. There was a Crown Books at the local shopping center that we would buy comics from on their magazine rack, and they probably had a spinner rack or two there as well. But we actually had an actual comic book store that was it was in town, and so it was very cool. You could get the direct to market ones and the nice, and you could, it was kind of like a convention in which you could go back and find back issues of stuff. So that was always fun, and it wasn't probably expensive for us at the time. Probably cost us a good amount of our allowance to pick up some of those older books that probably cost a couple dollars versus the 60 cents that they were on the rack at the time. But yeah, we collected completely different things, so we were able to kind of double up on stuff. So he was he was the big New Mutants guy, and I was all about Batman and Spider-Man and whatever I could get my hands on. And then it all went to heck when my dad took me to my first comic book convention when I was like 15 years old.
What year was this? What year was this?
88, I think. 88. So yeah, he took me to my first show, and there was an artist there, and his name was Sal Buscema, and he was doing sketching. And I didn't send you the thing of this because I didn't want to send you too many, but this is the first piece of art I ever got. And it was a headshot from Sal Buscema. It was free because that's what he did. He drew free sketches. And that was the gateway drug right there at 15 years old. They got me to go, oh, well, that's cool. I want more artists to draw stuff for me. And I don't know if my dad would probably really regretted ever taking me to a show, because as soon as I got a driver's license, that's what I did. There would be comic book conventions back then. You'd have shows in town, and they were like once every 3 months. There was a company called Jubilee. Yeah, Alberto. That one's staying here. I don't have a lot of my old stuff, as a lot of people know, but that's one of those that's never going anywhere. Yeah, so we had this company called Jubilee and a couple other companies that had local conventions, and what they would do is every 3 months in the DMV, as we call it now, but the Washington DC area, they'd put on a show, and there'd be one guest and comic book dealers, because that's all that was at a comic book convention back then, was comic books. And yeah, so I would go, and I'd get there probably about an hour before the convention to make sure I could get my place in line, and that was when an hour was early. And then, slowly people would get behind you, and there'd probably be like 7 or 8 people. And then as soon as the show opened, you made a beeline to they always had them in the back, and you made it go right to the back where you had
Still
to
at the back at those shows.
And yeah, and then you just sit there, and literally I would just sit there, and I would get a sketch, and I would just stay with the artist the whole day while they drew my drawing and the next person's drawing and the next person's drawing, and just sit there and watch them draw, and get out a little bit and look at stuff. But I was pretty much just there for the art. And I was really like, sketches was my thing. I didn't really get into buying any original art at first. It was all just sketches, because one, they were, more readily available and affordable. And I was going to see artists. So you'd get artists like Mike Zeck, you'd get artists like Ron Franz, and they just come to these local shows and do sketches for you.
Well, see, you lucked out. My first experience was getting turned down by an artist when I was around 16. Well, it was even earlier than 16, probably 14. And I never went, and I didn't go back again for another 20 years.
It turned you off. You were like, I'm done with this. No.
Yeah. It's it was Walt Simonson when he turned me down, when I saw him. I was in line like behind him. You know what? I was probably wanted to just get a signature or something from him, but I saw somebody getting a sketch in front of me, and I asked him for a sketch when it was my turn, and he said, "No, I'm not sketching anymore." So that was it. Imagine where I would be today if only he would have accepted my request.
Wow, that's amazing. And I don't think he said no to anybody after that. I think you were the last person he ever said no to.
Probably was. After he saw my look of disappointment. I was not 40 years old. When did his run on Thor start? What year was that? I'd have to go back and look.
80s.
I'm gonna have to Google it now. Simonson Thor. When did he start that? Gosh.
I probably have one somewhere.
83.
I might have one.
So it's 83. So yeah, I was 14 or maybe 15. I didn't think I would have driven to the show that it was at. So yeah, I was 15 years old, and he turned me down. So, and he had drawn a full figure Thor for the guy in front of me. Pencil, all pencil. But yep. So it was what it was.
Well, listen, but you've accumulated a little bit of art since then. So
I have, and I've got, and the thing is, I saw Simonson at many shows when I got back into when I first started collecting art, and usually my son would be with me. So Ashton's got like 4 free Simonson sketches,
right.
So he more than made up for what I didn't get when I was 14 or 15.
So it all evens out. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the late 80s, early 90s for you, and you're still picking up commissions. So where does that lead?
Well, like I said, so I mean, I had a book that I used to get them in. I grabbed, an 11 by 14 book, and I used to get, artists to draw in the book, and I just slowly started to get a little bit filled up, and then there were certain artists that I didn't think I was ever going to see, and at this point, you had art dealers at conventions, and they would sell art. I honestly don't remember if I ever ran into Berkey or if I ever saw, once again, I wasn't really paying attention. They weren't the biggest, section of the convention. They were always, it was very new to have art dealers at the conventions back in those days, at least at the local ones that I went to. So I would, I'd buy art, and I did start going to some other cons. I went to Mid Ohio Con one year. I went to Heroes Con back in 1993, which I think was the 10-year anniversary of Heroes Con. And that was fun. And through being in line in this area in Northern Virginia, you start seeing the same people in line for the shows, so you end up making friends that, have the similar interest to you. So you end up seeing, so that ends up being a thing where then you show up maybe a little bit earlier. You want to make sure that you're getting that spot, and it's all the same people. So the people that I ran into ended up being sort of a little mini crew that we used to hang out with. And it was, one of the people in the crew was, his name was Robert Jewell. And if anybody's seen Brian Stelfreeze in the last, 15 years or so, he sometimes does shows with Brian, and he hangs out with them at the tables and stuff. So he's I consider him a friend. There was a gentleman named Benny, who was a big collector of Simonson stuff and a big collector of John Byrne stuff. Actually got drawn into a John Byrne Next Men comic. John drew him into a comic, which is pretty cool. But these were the guys that, I hung out with. There's a guy named Steve. There was another Jeff. There was all kinds of people, and Jim Warden. We used to hang out with on a regular basis because those guys were probably a few years older than me. They were probably like, between 3 and 6 years older than I was. So they would, so they had a little more money than I did. They knew a little more people. They were buying more. They weren't just getting sketches. Some of them were buying published artwork. So they knew Jim, and I got to know Jim through them. And, through Jim, I got to actually go to John Byrne's house at that age when I was like 17 years old, and see how he worked and do this stuff, and go to dinner in New York Comic Con with like Mike Zeck. We went to like this rib place called Rusty Stop. So I'm sitting there with all these people, and you have no idea. You're 17 years old. You're just happy to be there, and it was just kind of a weird thing to be in. And I didn't travel to a lot of shows, but I did get to go to Heroes in 93. I went to New York in 93, and like I said, Mid Ohio Con. But I only did all that stuff, and I started collecting stuff, and then I would pick up published pages, but only from people that I, never thought I would actually get a sketch from, or I would, and this is one of these things that people can't wait for me to talk about is that Walter Simonson doesn't sell very much of his artwork at all, published. And at an art dealer, I found the cover to X-Men 171. And it happened that Walter and Bob Wycheck had donated it for a charity, and somehow whoever it made its way to a dealer. So I ended up picking it up from that art dealer, and I owned this page of artwork. And unfortunately, because I'm a little younger than you, I mean, I loved it because it was an X-Men cover, and I loved it because it had all the characters on it, and it was really great. But I don't know if I fully appreciated Simonson's artwork as much as I did some of the other guys that I was collecting at the time. So even though I had that page, and it's an amazing page, and I joke about this all the time, I'm like, I probably sold it because Wolverine wasn't on the cover. I don't know. I have no idea why I sold it. I really, kick myself over and over for letting an amazing piece like that go. But, you don't realize the significance of the fact that he doesn't sell much of his art. I didn't realize that was the introduction of like Rogue to the X-Men. You didn't know that he'd only done 2 covers for Uncanny X-Men in his entire career. These are all things that you don't put together till after the fact. Yeah. And it was, and
Yeah, but What did you do with the money? Alfredo wants to know.
Well, like I said, I would love to tell you that, I had the money that, that thing cost back in the early 90s was anywhere what it's worth now, but it is definitely not. So I'm sure it wasn't I'm sure back at the time I thought it was a hefty sum for a drawing, but I'm pretty sure it was, maybe 1/250th of what it's worth now. I would imagine something, I don't know. It wasn't a whole lot of money. I wish I even knew. I don't even know who bought it from me. I'm pretty sure I sold it on eBay, or no, it was probably earlier than eBay. I probably sold it for another piece. I wish I had a track for it. I do know that somebody knows who has it. But how they got it, I have no idea. It is not on this continent. That's all I know. Through,
I once owned a X-Men Teen Titans page. So yeah, that was once.
Yeah.
For a couple of years. And I remember I bought it was one of my more expensive purchases. It was like $575 or something at the time. And let that one go. Victim of the miniature golf course.
Yes.
But what are you going to do? And because those, I remember being shocked when I saw it. So I had to have it. Right. And but it's that same mindset. You think you can always replace it. And I can't even say that when the last time I saw one of those pages come to market.
No. Yeah. In my opinion, anybody aside for the other crossovers, that Teen Titans X-Men crossover is the best crossover between Marvel and DC. That, and I put it right up there with the Hulk Batman book, the oversized by Garcia Lopez. Those are my two favorite of any crossover between Marvel and DC, art wise at least. And the story was never as important to me as the art was.
Well, that's good. So first published piece, what was that? Would you pick up that wasn't a commission?
Oh my God, I don't even know what the first one
was. The X-Men piece, I'm gonna cry.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. What's it? It's not, like I said, it's I don't know. I never kept the first. I don't know what the actual first published, because like I said, published pieces didn't mean as much to me back then. I was really, I loved the idea of being able to walk up to an artist and say, could you draw this character in this kind of this way, and give them a little bit of art direction. And then they would draw something in their style with your idea, and you could make this creation that was just unique just for you. That's what I really loved about it, was getting these, I gotten Mignola to draw stuff for me, and I had gotten all these artists to do these things. Could you do this with could you draw a sea monster coming out of the bottom of the ocean with seaweed, and they would just do it. And you just be like, oh my God, this is incredible. So the published stuff was always second to the convention sketches, or I didn't really even get commissions back then. I don't know if commissions were a huge thing back then. I'm sure they were, but it wasn't anything that was on my radar to contact an artist and have them do something at home and then pick it up or have them mail it to me. I just, it was only when I would see them at shows. But I remember when I met John Romita Sr. and John Romita Jr. at a show in Maryland, and they were sketching. That was another one of those shows that I got there early for, and the guys in line behind me were the usual suspects, and I got both of them to draw full figures, and it was incredible. The amount of money it cost me probably was, it was a good amount of money. It was like $25 for a full figure from each one of them. So, $50 for a.
Hey, Carlos, I don't know if you had a theme, or did you just kind of suit the character to the artist or something?
I was one of those guys who wanted the person to draw what they drew best. And I had to, I didn't love Marvel more than DC. I didn't love anything more. So I always had the artists draw something that they were known for. So whereas, I got Mike Zeck when I met him for the first time and got a sketch, I got him to draw Deathstroke, the Terminator, because that's what he was doing at the time. And that's what I liked at the time. I could have gotten any number of sketches from him, but that's pretty much what I would always do. In that way, a lot of the stuff that I owned was very much, something that I could move on to somebody else, because it wasn't, I wasn't just collecting one character or or one thing. I was basically getting everybody to draw what they were best known for, because that's what I wanted. I wanted something that they had done. So my collection was very eclectic.
Well, nothing wrong with that. With the familiarity with the other people in line? I mean, was there competition, or was it more, did you kind of jog to the artist tables that you're going after?
We kind of respected the line pretty much. It's kind of the same stuff that goes on now at a smaller scale. I mean, obviously, if you go to the big shows, people just kind of go around to get to where they're going, but people kind of respected the line. They knew where they were. If you were there early enough and you needed to use the bathroom or something, they would let you get out and go back. It was very much, we were all there for the same thing. Now if you were back further in line, if you were like, 8, 9, 10, those people, well, typically they weren't the regular crew because we all knew what time we had to get there to get a sketch. But those people you didn't know, you kind of had to watch out for. So we would definitely sort of, make our way and try to keep it in the same line that it was out in front. The only time it ever became like not a problem, but it ever became like a competition would be, for instance, John Byrne. He would just draw whatever he wanted to at conventions and then auction them off. So if more than one person wanted a piece, that's when, sometimes the person with the bigger wallet ended up with the piece. But other than that, no, everybody was very respectful. Like I said, and typically, we'd all be there. The show would start at probably 10 a.m. and it would probably end at 5. So you had 7 hours, which was usually more than enough time for artists to draw, 7 or 8 pieces during a show. Cause that's pretty much what they were there for, was just to sign autographs and to draw for people. So, yeah.
So when you were, so you clearly you accumulated a lot of these, and do you still have the majority of them?
No, I definitely do not. I had, like, I do. I mean, like I said, I've got some older pieces that I have. Like the first cover that I ever bought was a Dreadstar cover by Angel Medina that cost me $10. And that was, I actually still have it here. Hold on. Let me see. So this, unfortunately, this is a piece that got water damaged. So it's, I know I had something happen. It's, but I still have it. And this is probably the first cover I ever bought. So probably preceded the X-Men 171 cover, but I still have it. And it was, like I said, it was a whopping $10. So it's one of those things.
Not on that cover either. I'm just
not on this cover. No. But this one, once again, it's not quite as collectible. I think I bought it because it was a cover and it was only $10. But yeah, so I still have that one. But yeah, most of the stuff that I bought back in the day, water damage. It's not fun. Most of the stuff I owned back in the day, once I got to college and I was actively started doing other stuff, whether it was dating. There's a cat for you.
Yeah. Hopefully Maureen's watching and she'll come get it. But wait, so you take the precedence over art?
Yeah, it's crazy. Like going to college and dating people and just doing other stuff with your life and I ended up moving on a little bit, and the stuff some of the stuff got put away, some of the stuff just got sold, and then I had always told my parents when I was buying this stuff, I'm like, someday this is going to pay for my college. And once again, if I had just waited to go to college until I was 40,
you were right.
I could have paid for a lot of college. I ended up selling a lot of it around the 2000 when eBay became a thing and people started selling stuff. I was, it was easy. I didn't have an attachment to it at that point so much anymore. And it was just stuff in my closet and I saw what some stuff was selling for. So I just started selling stuff off and, once again, breaks your heart. But, I was also in that and I really admire a lot of the collectors that are in this and are part of this group because I don't want to say I fell to, pressure or anything, but, sometimes we're taught when we collect certain stuff when we're younger and then we grow up and we move on and we start doing other stuff. And some of that stuff was looked at as being very, juvenile. And it wasn't that I, was like, oh, it's kid stuff. I can't look at it anymore. I just stopped thinking about it as much as I did and started thinking about other stuff. And it just kind of slowly went into the back of my head. And, but so I took off several years, sold some stuff on eBay, sold a lot of stuff, sold stuff that I have an entire regrets folder that's on. I have one that's on my CAF, and I also have another one that's in my phone to remind me now, especially before I sell anything, to make sure that you're really willing to move this from your collection into this folder, and are you going to regret it? Because if it's going to go in that folder, you shouldn't sell it. So yeah, we grew up. Exactly. Alberto says we grew up, and that's the thing is, and then so I was out of it for a very long time. I was out of it for, I think I went to a Heroes Con in 2006 because I was on a trip with a friend and he had never been to a convention before. So I was like, well, we'll go to this one. Happens to be going on that weekend. I'll take you. So we went for one day to, and I ran into Bob at that show, Bob Jewell. And I ended up, I brought some artwork that I had in my closet, and I ended up selling some stuff to Bob and some stuff to some other people. And just because I was like, oh, well, that's an excuse to get rid of some more stuff that I hadn't sold. And then it did that. That was pretty much it. I didn't really do anything else. So I stopped basically collecting art from like 1990, early 94, and didn't really do anything with it until about 2000. I want to say 2011. I was dating somebody at the time, and she was like, hey, there's a comic book convention that's like 5 minutes away. Should we take the kids? And I was like, if you want to go, I mean, you've never been to one. So we went to the comic book convention. There was an artist there. Herb Trumpy was there. And I was like, do you care if I get a sketch? I'm like, maybe I'll get a sketch for old time. And she's like, no, go ahead. Like, hi, Herb, can you draw me a Wolverine? That's it. The switch was turned back on. It was done. I was back. I instantly went to look and see what I had left that I hadn't pilfered and sold off. I immediately started looking for stuff. I immediately was out there checking and looking for conventions. And the following year, I went to Heroes Con for the first time, really in a decade, but not counting that 2006 show, but in more than a decade. And in 2012, we went to the show, and that's all it took. And once again, it's a drug, man.
Feel a good movie for all of us, people in the same predicament, Yeah, I'm back.
So that was, that's my sort of like way back in. And I remember before I started getting art again, I started picking up comics. So I picked up I think, A versus X was coming out then. So you had the X-Men versus the Avengers. And I was like, that's really cool. And DC was sort of revamping that. And so they did the New 52. So before that, I picked up Flashpoint, which I thought was just incredible. I was like, anybody could pick this up and just start reading DC. And the artwork was great because I recognized the artist because it was Andy Kubert, and he was an artist back in the 90s. So it was, it's the same thing with like reading A versus X when John Romita Jr. did a lot of that art. So I'm like, I know these guys. Even though I'd been out for years, I recognized the names still of the people who were doing stuff. And that's, that was all it took. So I did that. And yeah, I went to that Heroes Con, didn't go really crazy. I picked up a handful of stuff at that show, mostly just head sketches, little stuff, but yeah, absolutely.
Always an addict. Yeah. But we all know that feeling, one way or another. I mean, fortunately I have not, it was, I collected comics and then I came back to collecting comics and then I found art. So, I mean, it happens in the whole life cycle, I think, of collecting one way or another. You have to take a break. You have to mature just a little bit to know that it still was worthwhile to go back to it. Really, right? I mean, that's why we're here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it started like that, and I was still more into the sketches than I was into published art. I was just, it was fun to go back to cons. It was fun to get artists to do stuff. And it was, I did that. I went to Baltimore Comic-Con that same year in 2012. And I that's probably where I first met Joseph from Brit Comic Art, because Brian Bolland was at that show. Mm-hmm. And I got Brian to do me a Joker sketch at the show. And that was amazing, and it once again, just steamrolled from there to where I was, then it was, I wasn't as into it fully as I am now, where it's on a daily, almost, daily basis. Actually, sure. I was going to say weekly, but I'm like, no, it's pretty much all of us are kind of every day kind of looking at stuff.
Anymore, it's every day.
Right. But it was more like every couple months thing where I'd see what, so I basically just did those because they were close. They were the two big shows that were close to where I was. So it was like, Heroes Con in Baltimore, and anybody who'd ever gone to Heroes Con between 2015 and 2019, they knew where to find me. I was the first one in line for the show every year. Because once again, I wanted to control. I couldn't control a lot of stuff. I couldn't control how much money I had. I couldn't control much, but I could control what time I got in line, and that was what I did. So I knew that I was going to be able to
getting in line there. I mean, and
well, I should tell these secrets now, because every time somebody would ask me that when I used to before, now I go to shows, I go in and I don't get sketches a lot anymore. So I don't have to get in line super early. And plus I get in with 4C now because we work shows. But every time somebody would ask me that back in the day, I would just, I would just say early, because I knew if I told somebody I was there at, 7:00 in the morning, that then the next year I'd have to get there at 6. And then I knew if I told somebody 6, I'd have to get there at 5. And then it just became, this thing. So even on social media, I would like go to a show, I'd show up, and then I would wait a little while, a couple hours probably, before I would post anything saying, I'm here in line, where's everybody else, or something, which was just kind of a funny thing, making everybody think that was when I showed up, so that they're, but yeah, I didn't
want to give all your secrets away. I mean, when I was actively getting sketches, I would wait in line. I don't know if I'd get there at 7, but I'd at least get there 2 hours early. But so I didn't mind being 8 to 10 people deep, and people mentioning Higashi. He was always near the front of the line because he needed to get over to Adam Hughes or whomever was his primary target at any given show during that time. But did you? I mean, you must have seen John at some shows, right? I mean, because he, I'm trying to think. I mean, you know who John Higashi is, right?
I know I would recognize him if I saw him. I don't know if I would know him by his name, but like I said, if they're at these shows, there's so many people even now at these shows that it's almost like you feel bad to like introduce yourself to somebody who you've seen so much, you already feel like you should know. And that's why I feel bad sometimes now, like somebody will come up and say hi to me, and I'm like, do they know me because I know them, or do they know me because they watch 4C? Am I supposed to know them? And I'm like, and I feel really awful when I forget somebody's name. And I'm like, and I should just be like, what was your name again? I should just do that because that's what normal people do. But I probably just lie and go, hey, you, what's going on, buddy? And I do
a fair amount of that myself. But no, I get it. I get it. Yeah, John was the guy who always carried, 2 white, satchels with him full of books that he needed to get signed, or small eye toys that were in there. And he was always in line before me. So great guy though. I mean, and he was, well, now that I know you don't know him, next time I know that he's at a show that you're at, I'll make sure I introduce you guys.
Oh yeah. Well, like I said, I'm sure that, if somebody sent me a picture, I'm sure I'd be like, oh yeah, I know. Of course I know. Yeah. But there's lots of people even today, like I said, and that's one thing I loved about OAX was getting to meet people, that from people that have, come on 4C, and I know them only by their handles, and just other collectors that I've known for forever, but, known in the sense that we're always around each other and we see each other, but never actually, had the hi, handshake, go in and actually, talk about that. 'Cause you don't realize how big a community this is. And it's huge, and there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that do this and have done this over the years. And, and like I said, I've really never met a bad one. I honestly haven't. I've met people that are very unique, and I've met people that, are very serious about their stuff, but we all love the same thing. So you always have that in common with other collectors, you just hope they don't love the exact same thing as you. So you're constantly fighting,
Right, I know. Why does Jason have to like the X-Men? Why does James have to? I mean, there's too many. See, what I needed to like Aquaman, or some character that was going to be obscure enough that I wasn't fighting against too many people for.
Right.
But
listen, there's so many things. Like I was digging through stuff because doing this show made me think of a lot of stuff that I hadn't thought of before, and I wanted to show people. So this bag, this is a text chain. But not really. This is how we used to do it in the 90s. I had several people, probably like 7 or 8 people, who were all part of an art collecting group, and we made 7 copies of a letter, and we mailed photocopies of our art and letters to 7 people, and that's how we communicated. And I found like this stuff, and you guys would not believe the art that is in these photocopies. I don't know if these people still have this art. No, I'm not going to show this to you because these people may not want people to bother them over this art. But it's a war.
The fact that you saved it is interesting.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is I found a lot of stuff in old boxes and stuff at my parents' house, and I saved everything, and it just went in the closet with my comics. And a few years ago, my brother came and took all the comics because he wanted to take them. So he took all of them. I kept like a long box, and I just said, you know what, they're ours. It doesn't really matter. If you want them, you take them. And I just kept some stuff that was dear to me. So it was like a real good long box of stuff that I wanted to keep. And I've got like a chest of stuff, but I let him take the lion's share of the stuff. But it led towards me digging through stuff and finding cool things like this. Like I'll find. I mean, this was like my letter, so I can show you guys some of the stuff that that I was showing off back then. This was a Craig Hamilton piece that I still own to this day. It's the first piece of art that I actually ever got professionally framed. So this is probably the best view of it I have, because every time I try to take a picture of it, it's all glare. I had this Stelfreeze Catwoman that I'd gotten from him at the 93 Heroes Con.
It was like the Monera Spider-Woman that got him in all kinds of trouble.
Yeah, yeah, right, exactly. A little, kind of, a little sexy. I actually believe that I think I got somebody else to color this. I think Paul Mounts maybe, and then of course, like a lot of the stuff, it got sold. But there's a Butch Geist page. I still have this page also from what was it called? It was called X Factor Special Prisoners of Love. So this was a Beast storyline.
90s book, if I ever heard it title.
Oh yeah, and I have a copy of it. I always try, whenever I bought art, I would try to get a copy of the book, but it's I don't know if you guys remember this one, but it's written by Jim Starlin, and it's just the coloring in it alone is just very, it's very different. It's very I wouldn't even know. It almost looks very like pencils versus very
muted colors. That's for sure.
But I actually own 2 pages from this book. I picked one up a couple years ago. Somebody put up a bunch of them, and I was like, oh yeah. Somebody owns this. I've mentioned to them before that I regret selling it, but they are not willing to sell it back, I don't think. But this was a piece that I got. I had Rick Leonardi pencil it, and then I had Carl Story ink it, both in 1993 at Heroes Con in New York, respectively. And another piece I regret letting go. I don't know. Let's see. A Tony Harris page, a vampire page. I don't know what it was from, but just these are just cool little. This
is before CAF was out there, everybody. This was the first version of CAF. If there was a 0.1 version of CAF, this was it. I love it.
And then he wasn't supposed to, but George Perez was doing full figures at this show, so he did this Nightwing.
Very
so
nice.
That's just like I said, just a really fun stuff. Oh, and this one, I might have to edit this one, but this was a piece that I paid for from Jason Pearson, but never got because he was going to finish it at a different show. And I think by the time he was done with it, or I remembered it, had been out of comics for years. But it's a Catwoman. So if anybody knows where this finished Catwoman is, who's showing a little something there, we'll just cover that up. Yeah, I bought it, paid for it, but never got it. And then, very sadly, he passed away a very short time ago. So
you'd like to reclaim that?
Yeah, exactly. But that's just, once again, I won't show anybody else's stuff, but it's full of Bolland and Jim Lee and Todd McFarlane and just everything you can imagine that would have been Bernie Wrightson stuff that, just would blow your mind. And these are just stuff that was in friends' personal collections that they picked up. And, back then I was on a significantly smaller budget than everybody else in that group. So they had some great pieces, and we still complained about the price of art. Even back then, I was reading one of the things about complaining, and I was just like, wow, this is just it doesn't matter how much art is. It's always
going to be too expensive. Well, but yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, I don't know. I guess when I first started collecting, it didn't feel very expensive. But I think once you get a couple of years into it and your addiction is grown, of course, it's going to start to feel pretty expensive.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely, and that's the thing about the comic art is there's so many different levels. And I talk about it like a pool. I talk about it like, imagine like an Olympic sized swimming pool, and you've got the pool itself, and you've got the first step that you step into. And then, so we're all in the same pool. It's just, some guys are swimming in the deep end and some guys are just sort of working their way down. And, I like to think that I'm off the steps now and I'm starting to wade in a little bit, but I'm by no means in that deep end of the pool where, where some of these guys live. And it's fine because there's art for all different collectors. And that's the great thing about art is, you can always find great stuff. And that's another great thing about collecting sketches. And now people, doing remarks and some people doing sketch cards, is there's something for everybody, and you can find stuff, and you don't have to be able to afford a McFarlane Spider-Man cover, or a, Dark Knight Returns page to be part of this. You can just get anything.
And tons of people.
Nice and warm. That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
Now he knows that why the thing got the water damage, because you were in the pool.
Oh my God. But yeah, then like I said, when I started really getting into it and I started going back to shows regularly in probably the mid 2015 era, I ran into this lovely collector at a show. His name was Oliver Wee, and he said, "Have you heard about this thing called sketch prices?" And I was like, "No, I have not." He's like, "Are you on Facebook?" And he's like, we share information about stuff and share art." And I was like, "Oh, that's really cool." Because until then, I was just collecting for myself. I literally was just collecting for me. It didn't matter what anybody else, it wasn't that I was afraid to show off stuff I just got what I got. And, I didn't even think about, talking to other people about it and showing off what I had to other people, even though that's what we did back in the day. I just, I had been a part of CAF. I think I want to say I joined in 2012, but I mean, you'd know better than I would.
I was going to ask you about that. You joined in 2020 or 2012, but you didn't post your first piece until 2021.
Yeah, I used it
9 years with a CAF account and not post a single piece of art.
Yeah, I was crazy. When I started the account, it was it was right when I got back into collecting, and I did it to sort of look at what other people had, and I started reaching out to other collectors if there was a piece that I wanted, if there was something out there that I was looking at. And it was a way for me to contact other people, to get art. And, and I didn't even think about the fact that, that I didn't have anything on my site and maybe they wouldn't sell to me, or, maybe they weren't, it just didn't occur to me. It was just another, I trusted CAF because it was there. And if it was there, then, and all these people were part of it, it's the community, so I definitely looked at it as I was a looky-loo. I was the guy who was just looking at what everybody else had, watching all the stuff go by. But then, after a while, and I used to post my stuff on sketch prices. That's where I first started sharing my stuff. And it was very cool to be able to get information from other collectors and talk to other collectors. And I've met people through that. And then we did meetups at shows for people who were part of the sketch price group. I even met people that are dear friends to me now at the first sketch prices meetup that I met at that time, but didn't really get to know until later. Like, they were there when I was there, but I didn't really talk to them a whole lot. And then, after a while, I ended up being a part of a Zoom group that I ended up really getting to know a lot of these people. And that was later on, but, sorry, I'm back in the chat.
For how you got the water damage. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, geez.
You had to bring that up, man.
That drawer is full of stuff that I can't let go. I had a Mark Bagley sketch of the 3 female New Warriors, and it was very badly damaged, but I could not bring myself to throw it away. And luckily, my friend Mike Becker, who is a part of the 4C family, co-host with me over there, he is a huge New Warriors fan, and I was like, "Listen, I don't know what to do with this. And I know that and he loved it. And I gave it to him. I was like, just take it. Cause I can't destroy art. I can't, but I don't know what to do with it, because I also don't, I don't want to keep a bunch of, stuff that's damaged just, with my other stuff. I don't want it to get, I could put it in a drawer somewhere, but I would rather, maybe somebody could, and I talked to you about this at OAX about, meeting the restorer and seeing if there's pieces that I can restore that are, worth restoring or possible to restore. So that's something with a few of them.
Just like Marcus said, Von Hawk.
Yeah.
But I've actually, since she missed the show, I have gone back and sent her 3 different clients. So she's definitely picking up work from the show. So I can get you her contact information if you'd
Yeah,
like to.
absolutely. Like I said, there's pieces, and there's some that I'm like, it may not be worth in value, money dollars to get it restored, but just to have it put back into its original position, I think it's worth getting done. Some of the stuff is just worth it, even if it's not monetarily worth it, even if it doesn't make sense, just to get it to where it's not just a broken item anymore, where it's fixed. So that's something I'm definitely going to look at. Some of them, unfortunately, were not drawn with waterproof pens, and some of them have mold that's too awful, and some of them is split because it's double ply. Back then, the double ply paper, and it would just split in half and stuff. So unfortunately, but like I said, every time I run into somebody, I'm like, well, maybe they'd like this. Maybe this is something that they're willing to put the time and effort into getting done because it means that much to them. So, so I got the drawer. It's here. It's not going anywhere.
All right. Well, I will get you her contact information after the show.
Excellent.
I think she's definitely worth it. So you were on CAF. You were just using it as a means of communication. I mean, did you ever get the standard comment? Because I get asked all the time for when somebody who doesn't have art in their CAF gallery, people are always suspicious. So you spent 9 years being that guy that was suspicious. Did anybody ever say that? Like, are you new to CAF or give you a hard time?
No, I like I said, I probably watched more than I did anything. I might have picked up 3 pieces over that time on there. So anything that I went out, I really had to back and forth for a little while and negotiate a little bit. And then I would literally be trusting and do probably mail a check or do a wire transfer or something, whatever we did at the time, back then before Zelle and all the other forms of PayPal and stuff like that we were doing. And, I remember I picked up a front facing Brian Ballin Joker piece, and I can't for the life of me remember some of the other pieces that I picked up, but it was just a few. And I was, like I said, I was more on it peripherally than I was, involved in it and in everything. And like I said, that sketch price group led to me to have one of the dearest friendships in my life. And that's with Mr. Ken Carson, which is just one of those things that happens. How I met Ken was, he was one of those guys who messages people and says, is anybody going to go to the show? Cause I'd like to get, and it wasn't a sketch. He wanted to get an omnibus signed by Kelly Jones. And I was like, well, I'll be at that show.
Marcus's favorite right there.
Yeah. And so and I said, well, you know what? Why don't you just mail it to the hotel? That way I can just I don't have to take it with me. I'll just pick it up when I get there and I'll take it to get signed for you. It's no problem. I'm there all 3 days. And then he mailed it, and then Kelly canceled. So that's how Ken and I started our friendship, was just through sketch prices, just mentioning, that.
Well, wait a minute. What did you do with the omnibus? Did you fly back with it?
I had to mail it back to him, and I don't know. I'm sure he paid for the shipping on it. I don't remember at the time, but I'm sure I wouldn't have paid to ship it back because I was cheap like that, and I didn't know him, so I'm sure he paid for the shipping. But and then later on, I was at a show, and it was 2019, and I was at Baltimore, and Walter Simonson was there. And I didn't have a whole lot of money to spend because Jim Lee was there, and I had gotten a Jim Lee sketch, and that kind of ate up all of my funds because I didn't find out about that until 10 days before the show, because I had messaged when I found out he was going to be there. I messaged Albert Moy, and he never got back to me. So I ended up buying a page of Jim Lee's artwork off of Albert, and spent what I was going to spend on a sketch on that. And then so I only had a minute budget, and then he told me that he was going to do my sketch. So then the lion's share of my money went towards that sketch, because I wasn't going to turn down the sketch, even though I'd already bought a page. But so what can you do at a convention when you only have a little bit of money? You can go see Walter Simonson and get him to do a headshot for a donation to Heroes Fund. So on day 1 I did, and then on day 2 I did. And then Ken Carson was on sketch prices and said, oh man, I would love to have a Walter Simonson sketch. That's because I probably posted one. And I was like, if you want one, I'm like, I'll get one for you. Cause I had already gotten 2, and this was like a grail of his to get. So I went up to Walter on Sunday and I said, can you do a Beta Ray Bill sketch for me? And I said, can you make him front facing? And he always did a profile. And he was like, sure. And he did it front facing. And I was never so mad at myself for not getting that for myself than I was for getting it for Ken. And it's such a great sketch and it's so awesome. And I sent him pictures of it and I sent it to him. And then, and that was that. And from that, he was very grateful. And then, 2020 hit and the pandemic hit. And like everybody else, I was like, art had been such a huge part of my life at that point where I was doing conventions and I was going out and doing stuff. I didn't know what to do because you couldn't go out, and I joke with people all the time. I'm like, when I had the dream of not going to work for 3 months, I figured I'd be able to go see a movie or do something. And it wasn't that I'd be trapped at home, with nothing to do. And then Ken invited me to be a part of a Zoom group for artists. And I had never spoken a word never heard his voice, never seen his face. And he brought me into this group. And I Zoomed with some other collectors. And it was like, it saved me during the pandemic. It really did. I wanted to do this thing twice a week, and we only did it one time a week. And there was this other show that also helped out a little bit. Some guy who runs this comic art fans thing started a channel, started putting on shows and stuff too.
Were you part of that Saturday group that always would get together on Zoom?
Yeah, you went to once.
I went to one. I got invited one time, and I went, and then I was on the list after that, and I never
came back. Never came back. That's all right, buddy. We don't hold it personally against you.
I always think about it. I'm still on the list. I think, one of these days I'm going to pop in. I thought about going in there after OAX just to surprise everybody. And I still just don't. I mean,
you're a busy guy.
Sunday night, I want to be, I'm the one who wants to turn on the television and just watch something to be a little brain dead with a beer because, But
through
that was a great group though. There's a lot of people in there, and that was a great service. I think that list or that group started up before the first Comic Art Live. I think it was within the first 2.5, 3 months of the pandemic. So probably by late April, early May of 2020, they were already doing that. And and it felt awkward. That's why I didn't do it initially. I was just like, well, that's just sitting on a screen with 20 other people. How are we all going to talk? Or do anything, and then look where we're at now. But yeah, that's what it felt like. It was a there was a lot of you had to like, I don't know, I have no idea how we got here to this point, but but I'm glad we did. But I thought that was great because Benham was in charge of that group, I think, and or one of the core people, and he's still out there, sending out his emails today. So that's awesome. He is.
Yeah, we're very. It still meets on Saturdays. Not as vigorously as it once was because people's lives have gotten back a little bit. But everybody still comes on every once in a while, and the same and some people come on later than others. But it was just one of those things that sort of saved all of us because we had gotten so used to doing shows. It actually also helped out a lot of artists who relied on income from doing conventions because we would have them as guests on the show. And they would offer sketch ops, and we would all, pretty much everybody would try to get a sketch, and it was a way so they could make money, and it was a way so we could get art. So it was
the first streams that were done, to help to do sales like that, and then when did it? Because sometimes, say in that summer, you saw a lot of businesses start doing claim sales, and I'm not just talking about comic shops. It was like the local antique store that still couldn't reopen, right? Doing their claim sale shows, and they would sell the stuff and put it outside their door of the antique store for people to come back and pick it up, and you just saw all these other businesses, and that's when we started thinking about doing claim sale shows on the channel. But I'd have to assume that given your like the art exchange with Ken, hey, can you pick this up for me from Walt Simonson, and then seeing the stuff going on in the Zoom calls, is that really what led to 4C? Because you're kind of doing the same things.
Yeah,
even
that
today.
was all. It's all Ken. Ken had started 4C before I even got there. He he did some mystery envelopes with some artists, and did some other smaller things. He worked with Joe Rubenstein and a couple other people, and was doing stuff like that. And then he wanted to do the live show, and then it was one of those things. He did a few by himself, but he realized that he could use somebody to play off of, or somebody to do a lot of the the talking. And for anybody, once again, knowing me from the group, and from becoming really good friends doing that, he had asked me. I wasn't necessarily his first choice, but he asked me if I wanted to be a part of it. I'm not saying I was like his last choice, but I was definitely, he just didn't know exactly what he was looking for.
Right.
And then, he got me on there, and he realized I don't shut up, and I can fill dead air time. And that's, that kind of started our, he invited me in, and, from that point we were basically, sort of partners, if not, total partners. We in feeling, I always felt like I was his partner, and I've always felt like, he listens to what I have to say, and I listen to what he has to say, and he's put his whole, everything into this. I mean, it's called 4C because his last name's Carson, and he has a wife and 2 beautiful kids, and he also used to work making rings for diamonds, and everybody knows diamonds are judged on the 4 C's. So it just one of those things that just made sense to him, and like I said, I was just happy to be a part of it. And it's one of those things where I got to come on and talk about one of my favorite things every week, and talk to artists, and that's where it became sort of this thing. People, they couldn't go out and go to get sketches, and they could try to contact people and get commissions, but a lot of people couldn't afford what some of these guys would want for full commissions. They just wanted to get a sketch like they could get at a convention. And that's where 4C that's kind of where we found our niche, was living in that affordable, area where you could claim a sketch and watch them draw it live. And then they would mail it to Ken, and Ken would send it out to the person. And it was just this way people could every week, you know how it is. You have these times and stuff that you have your shows, and every week people count on you being there. Whenever you take a night off, people are like, Bill, I didn't know what to do. You weren't on. Like, there was no dueling dealers. There was no this. I have no,
Right. Well, and the thing is, you guys, when you're at shows, right? So, it's usually Ken on camera. He'll go up to an artist and just start flipping through their portfolio, asking if anybody wants him to buy anything for them. Right. And I'm sure there's a service fee involved in doing that. But the idea that he's making himself available to be a buyer for you when you're not at the show. So,
right.
I mean, there's an interesting market there. I mean,
listen, that's how we got Russ Braun. I literally went up to his table at Baltimore Comic-Con one year, and I said, hey, would you mind if I tried to sell some of your stuff on and I said, we'll put a modest markup on it. He's fine. And he only had a good show because we sold so much of his art on the channel, and he ended up coming to be repped by us because of that. He just had he said he never had more fun than doing that live show that we had just done, sort of spur of the moment at this convention. And it was one of those great things. And now there's other people who've taken that idea and really ran with it. Like, Clay McDonald, they do it very well. They've got a staff of people, they've got a family, they've got the ability to do stuff. So, and a lot of things, I think that he's been on the forefront of so many things that he does with his ideas. And sometimes people just have the ability to take it to another level. And, it's a free market. You guys, and somebody who can do something can do it. But that's why he's always innovating and always trying to think of what the next thing is. And, it's always been him. And like I said, I'm just blessed to have my name associated with it. And just, just the things that go with being part of 4C that just would blow my 15-year-old, 14-year-old's mind, like the fact that I can see Jim Shooter at a show and he knows my name. Just, that's the guy that wrote Secret Wars that knows who I am. These are just amazing things that have just come from being a part of my friendship with him. And, which all came from an act of kindness. It all came from just somebody helping out somebody else, No,
so I think, many good things were born out of, the pandemic and just necessity. And, and the thing is, you guys, you don't have to be any bigger than you already are. I mean, I know that, there's, I know Clay McDonald does a fine job with their business model. There's plenty of room for a lot of people.
That's one of Ken's favorite sayings is we're not fighting over the same dollar. There's plenty to go around.
There's so much artwork out there and so many different opportunities. And it's, it's all. I mean, come on, they work with Spencer primarily, right? When they deal with their art, so that's just one agent out of 100 in the U.S. that you could work with, let alone all the freelance artists that are out there. And is Ryan Benjamin going to OAX 2025? I don't know, Marcus. You have to wait and find out.
Said, for anybody who was on 4C earlier, we had Ryan Benjamin doing sketching tonight. I did that show, sort of double duty tonight. And Ryan said that he would love to do a show on the East Coast. And we mentioned OAX and what it is. And he was like, yeah, I think I'm going to do that one. And I was like, when did this happen? In the last 5 seconds. So I think Yoshi will be in contact with you to see if that's a possibility.
I need to, I owe Yoshi an email. He emailed me like right after OAX, and I haven't gotten back. The emails immediately after OAX, I've just like stopped. I haven't gone back and looked at them in like 2 weeks. So, but Mikey Poo-Poo's he's like, do you guys split the profits? How does that work?
No, well, listen, Ken actually left his full-time job to make 4C his full-time job. This is what he does. He lives, he breathes it. He's in another state than I am. He lives in Orlando, Florida. I live in just outside of Washington, D.C. Everything sort of funnels through him. I always joke and I say that I'm like the Ronald McDonald of 4C. I might be the face, but I really have no power here whatsoever. And that's half jokingly, but he does almost all of the work. It's the money stuff is just it's just another thing, but it's his business, and I'm just very happy to be a part of it. And to do what I can. And from doing the live shows came the doing actual conventions. And, so from that, we've grown and grown and grown. And, we're always willing to work across the aisle, which we always appreciate, talking to you and comic art fans and you, Bill, have always been really great with us. You've even come on our show and done some joking stuff where you started one of our shows.
Nobody knew what was going on.
Yeah, you came on. That was great. You came on and started the show like it was your show, and it was on our channel. And we've done interviews on your channel for the CAF Lives, and we just love that we can work together. We've worked with so many different companies. We worked with comic sketch art. We've worked with Artaholics. We worked with Spencer. We work with anybody because we're willing to work with anybody because we know that a lot of people have already committed to be with other people, but it doesn't mean that we can't work together. And that's kind of been all of our thing. And it's been our business model. It's been Ken's business model. And he's always, reached across the aisle and done that. And it's worked out very well for us. And I like to think it's worked out for the artists too. And, so that's the 4C story. It's a really great story. And it took a lot of hard work from Ken and, a lot of yapping from me.
Well, that's I don't know. That's great. Well, I mean, I always feel like that's CAF's role. We can work with anybody that wants to work with us. And we're happy to do it.
Except for MegaCon. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that's a totally different story. But we don't have to worry about that next year because we have a week between our shows. So now there's no uncomfortable closeness, proximity to our shows. And I think any artist that wants to go see go set up at MegaCon, they're not going to be interested in coming to OAX and vice versa. And I think that's for the better. Sorry, I've got my partner is back.
That's all right.
Unhappy. Just show her butt to the audience. That's
all right.
But we should probably start looking at some artwork. I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got like 18 pieces to look at, and some interesting stuff. I see some of it behind you. So
yeah, I have a rotating thing. I only have a very few things in frames because this is not my permanent home, so I don't want to have too much stuff to move. So most of my stuff is in top loaders or portfolios, but I do have a few choice things, and I like to rotate the back. I rotate stuff around.
Yeah, the cat butt is for MegaCon. Thank you, Linda. All right, well, we're going to show that first slide, and I'm going to get up and see if I can find that piece of artwork that you or Ken have to own. So here, let me highlight artwork number 1 here. Here we go.
Yeah, so this is from this was the first Heroes Con I went to back in 2012, and I thought what a good thing to get with the artists that were there would be to get a jam because it was the year the Avengers movie came out. So I rushed to this show. I went to Walter Simonson. Well, I went to Neil Adams, who was a little higher priced than I thought he would be. And then I went to Walter Simonson's table, and I was probably 4th in line. And I was like, by this time, the show had been open for like 5 minutes, and I knew that I'd missed my shot to go anywhere else. So I just held pat and I stayed there. And, long story short, 4.5 hours later, Walt showed up, and eventually I got a Thor on this. And while I was waiting, I ended up getting George Perez to do this lovely Hulk, because I'd loved the Future Imperfect storyline. And then I walked over to Epting, who said that he would draw Cap front facing, but I just, after that helmet, I didn't think there was enough room. So I actually asked him to draw Cap sideways. He wasn't even drawing at this show. He was there. He didn't even have a pencil. Luckily, my girlfriend at the time had a full bag full of pencils and pens. And I told him I loved his Cap, and he was happy enough to do that. And then Bob Layton on Sunday did the Iron Man. And the great thing about this piece is that the Thor was free. The Captain America was free. George Perez charged $30 to do the Hulk. And when I went to Bob Layton, I asked him, how much he wanted for it. And he said, well, what did these guys charge you? And I told him, and he said, well, you're not getting it for free. But if $30 is good enough for George, it's good enough for me. So this whole piece that's on a marble board cost me $60. And it's a piece that I will never part with. It's just I just love it. I love that I was able to get all these legends on one board. And I call it the Grumpy Avengers, because they all look pretty grumpy.
They're ready for battle.
They are.
Hey, so I found that piece of artwork here, and
all right, let's see it. I'm guessing does it have a 4C on it or something? I'm waiting to see.
It does. It does. Let me get here we go. So take a look at this. It is in the same font as 4C.
Wow.
I mean, there's no lie there, right? Is that I saw that, I just laughed, because
that is
it's uncanny.
Who's the artist on this?
It's Brian Hitch. It's
Brian Hitch, right? We were just
Batman Graves 1. But so it's actually a pretty decent page, but again, look at the 4C. It is your logo.
It's perfect.
This was drawn with 4C's, buying this thing in mind. I mean, this thing has to go on the wall.
Set that aside. We'll get with you and Brian and see how we can make that happen, because that is too perfect.
Isn't that funny?
That is. Listen, I actually sent Ken a meme the other day that something had popped up on my Facebook, and the first thing that was there was the beautiful actress with the really beautiful blue eyes who was in. I mean, she's been in so much stuff. True Detective. She was in Baywatch, the movie. I can never remember, Alexandra something, but she's literally standing in front of a door, and it says 4C like right behind her in like this before you start the video. And I was like, this is, so I immediately sent it to Ken, and I was like, this would make a good poster right there. So, thank you, Alexandria Dudar. That's right.
Becky's in the audience. Thank you, Dave.
Yep. Marcus right behind. Behind. But yes, no, that I love that, Bill. That's great. And then the font is the capper.
That was the thing. If the C was drawn any differently, but that is your C. It's crazy. Anyway, all right. So there, I knew I was going to be setting that one aside for you. Let's see. I think we got some Dan Panosian here next.
Yes. So this is another piece that another thing that I used to do back in 2020 and 2021 was I was religiously watching the Drink and Draw with Dan Panosian. It had Jeff Johnson, Dave Johnson, and Joe Quesada, and they would they do themes, and they would all draw live on the show. And so they would do these drawings, and one time he did this for the show, and I just direct messaged him, and I said could I buy this off of you? And he said absolutely, and he was nice enough to sell it to me. And my brother was always a huge Dazzler fan, and this is just a beautiful piece, and the colors are just sensational, just different shades of blue, and I just thought it was great. And Dan's been drawing since the 90s, and his style has just evolved so much into this just incredible, the art that he does now is just I think, it's heads above the inking work that he was doing back in the 90s. And I just knew I had to have it. So this is one of these great pieces that I was able to get because of another show that started during the pandemic.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I've commented on Panosian's post that how much I like, his work and how much it's evolved into something really fantastic these last few years. But yeah, no, this is gorgeous. So I love it. Love the colors. It's fun. And those drink and draw episodes, I watched them a lot earlier on, but they were always fun. Just Casada in there, and they'd always have a good guest, and not always, but most of the time they'd have somebody unique in there. You'd have Mike McNullis swing by. So yeah.
There was a great one with Alex Ross where he drew a thing that all the guys on the show, every guy, all of the artists were all drooling over. They're all like, that's going to be mine. Right. And then, I think Casada may have stepped in and pulled rank on it, but I'm like, who else can get those incredible artists than other incredible artists? So it was definitely worth watching. And honestly, I don't know if they still do it or not. I'm pretty busy with your shows and our shows and doing shows that I don't even know if it's still on. I'm assuming that it is. But somebody else out there will have to let me know if it is. I definitely would love to tune back in.
I haven't watched it in a long time, but I can't answer that question. I'd be surprised if they didn't at least do it every now and again. I mean, Essential would pull together some of the guys and do similar things, but not quite the same. But you figure Finch is out there doing his regular thing. He's got, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of followers on his YouTube channel.
Right.
But yeah. Let's see here. What do we got next? Oh, RT Bear. There we go.
Yeah, so this is something I wanted to bring a few things that I know I don't really have up on my CAF, I don't think, and this is one of them. This one is just an incredible piece. It started off with him. Art was he posted this on his Facebook, and it was just pencils and it was just the eyes. And I immediately messaged him, and I was just like, I would love to have this when you're done with it if it's for sale. And I did not expect, and he just completely reached it back out to me, and said, yeah, sure. And then it just sometimes, and he's penciled stuff before. He did the Cable book. He's done his own book that he does. But sometimes a lot of the inkers from back in the day, some of them were really incredible inkers, but their pencils, never really had that three-dimensional feel, or that they just didn't. It's nothing behind the eyes. And I knew the second that I saw this piece in the eyes that it was just beautiful. And my daughter loves Harley Quinn. And even though she's wearing a tight outfit, it's not super sexualized. And it's one of those things where I gave it to her. I actually had Art personalize it to my daughter, and it actually hangs in my daughter's room. She's, my daughter loves art. She moved to Chicago to go to a charter art school. She loves, there's stuff that she, really, really loves. In fact, she's the reason why I was $200 poorer at a convention with Scotty Young, because I told her if she rolled the dice and got doubles, I'd buy her a sketch of anything she wanted, thinking the odds on that happening were very few. And she ended up not only rolling doubles, but she rolled snake eyes. And, God, so I was like, well, that was $200 I wasn't planning on spending. And I was like, what do you want? And she got a Catwoman from Scotty Young. I don't even own a Scotty Young, and my daughter has a Catwoman chibi from Scotty Young. So she has a small collection of art, and this is part of it. And I just, like I said, it's just, you don't see a lot of stuff from Art out there, and this was just something that I just couldn't turn down. And I don't even want to tell you how modestly priced it was for how beautiful it is.
Well, I've always felt that RT Bear could, because I've seen it work just by him in the past. I mean, he was a great complimentary inker to several artists or several pencilers, but I've seen his own stuff, and I always thought he was a very accomplished artist. I mean, a lot of inkers are, but like you said, you don't get the opportunity too often to see, inkers get to kind of shine as a penciler too. But like Joe Rubenstein too, he's a great artist as well as being a lifetime, inker. So it's just this kind of what it is. You look at John Beatty, those pieces he did for OAX, they're fantastic.
Oh yeah.
But you only think of John as an inker, not somebody who's doing his own work.
Right.
And your camera cut out, Jeff, but that's okay. Yeah. I'll just switch over to the next slide.
Oh yeah, you're good. There. Oh, there, I got it.
Yep.
All right.
See, yes, he's back, everybody.
I'm here.
I forget what the next slide is. Oh, that's right, because it was a jam piece.
Yes. So this one, yeah, I didn't want you to have to fill the whole screen with all the names of all the people who are on this, but this is a piece that takes me back to 2017. Carrie Gamble had done, I guess, in the 90s, had done this this Justice League piece. It was in pencil. It was detailed in some spots and rough in other spots. And I just thought to myself, this would make an incredible like layout for a jam. And I think I bought it off of Anthony's site, and it was about $125 or something. And then I proceeded. It took me a while, but I ended up getting Jerry Ordway to do the Superman, and the Superman before did have the he definitely had the mullet, but I kind of wanted it to be a little less dated, so I told him that he could lose the mullet on it. And then slowly over the next several years, I ended up getting more and more people to do stuff on it. I had Barry Kitson do the Green Lantern, and then the next one was the it took me a couple years, but I locked down Mike Zeck. He was at a local show here in town, and I knew that he was going to be at Heroes Con the following week. So I asked him if I could give it to him and pick it up the next week, so he wouldn't feel obligated to do it at the show. And he said he would. So I did that. And then immediately I during that same show, I actually won Kevin Nolan's lottery, and I wanted him to do the Flash on this since the year before. So I got him to do the Flash on it. And then was able to go to San Diego Comic-Con in 2022, and I got Scott Williams to do the Martian Manhunter because I thought the pencils on it looked very Jim Lee-like, and I was like, oh, this will be great. It'll look like I've got a Jim Lee, Scott Williams on this piece. So, and the one thing for the longest time, I had wanted to get Jose Garcia Lopez to do the Wonder Woman, but I'd never won his lottery. 6 years of trying, I had never won, and unfortunately, because of the pandemic and just time, his eyes weren't good enough to where he felt comfortable working on a jam because he didn't know if he could get the proportions right to what everybody else had done, and he just didn't think his eyes were good enough, so he didn't feel comfortable doing it. So I was, once again disappointed and had to pivot a little bit, but I was very lucky the beginning of last year to get Arthur Adams to do the Wonder Woman, which I would say is a lateral move. I wouldn't say it's a down step, although very disappointed about not getting Jose to do it, but I think that it's a pretty good substitute.
Well, the Art Adams is harder to get, I think, than the Garcia Lopez. So you did rather well getting it.
Oh yeah, it was amazing that he was even willing to do it, and it's going to make people sick, but he did it on a Sunday at the show. I walked up to him on a Sunday, and he just did it that day. So it wasn't even one that I had to stand in line for hours and hours and hours to get. And then I got Mike Grill to finish it up by doing the wonderful Archer there, Green Arrow, and I had wanted Neil Adams to do that for a while, but once again, he ended up passing away before I was able to get it to him. So once again, Mike Grill is an incredible artist, and I don't know if I definitely disappointed that I never got Adams to do it, but it's just still a wonderful piece, and nobody draws Green Arrow like Mike does. So
no, I think that was a good choice too. And you had mentioned like the prices on Neil Adams stuff. I never got anything from Neil Adams at shows, only because he was always at a premium, but he treated his work with respect by by pricing it at those points. And we as collectors probably more often than not walked away because I didn't want to pay $350 for a bust or something on a 9x12. Right. 10 years ago when because you knew you could walk up to somebody else and get it for $250. Yeah. But yeah, you look at it now and it's like I would have done it 10 times over. If I would have thought. Oh yeah,
I mean, he knew his worth. He knew his worth, and he knew it before.
Going to do it for less, and I appreciate that more now than ever before. After because his booths were everywhere. Every major show that you go to, you always saw him, and I'd still never bought a piece direct off of him. I didn't buy one until I did a live stream with him, and then he wouldn't let me pay him. He did it for free and sent it to me. So it's but yeah, no, he was very one of a kind. That's for sure.
That's it. The only piece I ever got from him, Marcus has now. It was the giveaway for my amateur dueling dealers. It was the coaster where he did the free Batman sketch for me. And that's like I said, getting a free, that thing it's worth its weight in gold because it was done for free when that guy, he charged $5 an autograph back in 2012. So
Right.
getting him to draw that was just like a grail unto itself. And, after, right around his passing, I picked up one piece from him, and I have this green lantern behind me that I was able to get on tonal paper. And that's the only Neil that I have, but it's perfect. It's all I need. I have a great example. So, here.
It's lean again. Okay. Yeah, there you go. Just go get it. Look, because it looks fantastic.
I mean, it's.
Oh, hell yeah. That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
Let's see what I see. So Matt wanted to know, what was your total budget on your jam piece?
Well, it started off fairly inexpensive. I think, because of, once again, the times, when you start off, it was, I think I got, right around that $50 range for the green lantern and for the Superman, somewhere in that area. And then, Zach was a little more, honestly, Scott Williams didn't charge very much at all. The priciest one was definitely the Arthur Adams, but it wasn't anything completely outrageously reasonable. So the whole piece, it was probably over $1,000 when it was done, but not too far over. And that's counting the starter piece at $125. So somewhere in there.
Yeah,
but yeah, but well worth it. Well worth every penny. And just taking that journey that I just completed last year. So it was from 2017 to 2023. So it was, like 7 years of just having that. And for people who do jams all the time, I when I start one, I'm like, I have an idea of who I want to do everything. So it takes a lot of time and persistence. And then stuff happens, like, something happens to artists and you have to kind of pivot and change. Some people are able to do jams and they just give them to a bunch of different people. So it just depends on how you want to do it. But it's, there's no wrong way to. I don't have the patience to do it again. I don't think I'm going to start another jam. Like the easiest jam I ever did was the one show jam, which was the Avengers one, where I just got the headshots and that was, it was all one show.
Mm-hmm.
But you can get some incredible work if you have the patience and the persistence to do that. That was mine. I had it. It's done.
Yeah, I have never done a jam ever. I thought about buying a few here or there, but yeah, no, I don't think I'd have the patience. I'd have to do it all in one show.
Yeah, I have another jam that I did that took me several years to do, and it was just a Walter Simonson jam. I had him do Lady Sith and the Warriors 3. And that took years because of the pandemic, because I started it before the pandemic and wasn't able to finish it until after. But that was and that was just one artist. The same artist did all 4 head sketches. And so that's the only other time consuming jam I'd ever done. And other than that, I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I could do another one. They're a very great way to get wonderful art from great artists and not spend a lot of money. So I highly encourage people who are looking for something cool to do on a budget to definitely look at getting something like that.
Words of wisdom from Josh.
Yeah.
I'd probably do is I wouldn't mind doing like how they sometimes people do it like a grid and then just get head sketches in them, because then I feel like I'm not completing a real composed work of art. Then I could maybe wait 6 or 7 years just to get the right group of artists for whatever I was going to do with that. But what you did is a lot more challenging.
Yeah. And like I said, Marcus, I actually, how Walter's doing it now is he really is only trying to do sketches for people who've never gotten sketches before. That's what he told me this year last time I saw him. And once again, it's that thing where if I had known the last potato chip was the last potato chip, I would have really treasured it and I wouldn't. So I did get one more sketch. It wasn't a book and it was for my brother, but I got my one last sketch. I will not bother Simonson ever again for another sketch because I want to make sure that I honor him and everything that he's given over the years and to let other people get stuff. Cause it's a big thing to me. It's always been a big thing to me to not, use my position in the art industry. Yeah, exactly. You are.
I have not gotten a Simonson for myself. I have not. They were all for my son.
You need to come to Baltimore, maybe, or another show and get your sketch. Bring it full circle, Bill. Bring it full circle.
I should. Yeah, the man who could have gotten my art collecting career started much earlier. Yeah, that'd be interesting. So, what do we got here? I think we're switching back to Dan again.
Another Dan Panosian. Like I said, I don't. These are basically the only 2 real pieces I have from Dan, but this was another one that was a commission that I messaged him about, and I told him about before Heroes Con, and I told him that I wanted Marv all band-aided up and like with like a silhouette of Nancy in the background, and I just gave it to him. And when I came back, this is totally not what I was expecting at all with the directions that I'd given him. And I love it so much. I was imagining like a full figure Marv with just like a black and white Nancy in the background. And he just took this to like another level. And even though it's only a, whatever you want to call it, a 3/4 headshot, it is just incredible. And then I get the full figure Nancy in the back, and it's just something it's even done on a Dark Horse board that I had from another artist that I had gotten it from. So I'm like, I really feel like this could be something that could get published and be a cover for a Sin City. It's just, I love it so much. And the shading he did on it.
Right. I mean, that's pencil and like ink wash, right? I can't tell.
It's literally just pencil and marker. Like everything you see that's gray is just pencil shading.
Yep.
So it's literally just, just black and pencil. That's it.
Sensational, says Rick Welch.
Yeah.
Rick, you have a career in writing, good humor for somebody. I mean, I'm telling you, if you're ever looking for a job, you got one here.
There you go. You're gonna make Marcus jealous, though, Bill. Be careful.
Hey, I've offered Marcus opportunity, some screen time.
He doesn't have time. He's too busy commenting on art. He doesn't have time.
That's right. He can't break. But maybe, I honestly actually mailed the crotch goblin back to Marcus last week. I think last I checked, it was supposed to be there today. But I told him he should film the unboxing of the crotch goblin and the rest of the stuff that was in the box, because it's going to be a wonderful gift for him. So let's see here. So Stelfreeze, you mentioned Stelfreeze earlier.
I had that other. Yeah, I had that cat. Well, this was another show where I went to a Baltimore Comic-Con, and I was first in line for the show. And I honestly, until the show opened, I did not know what I was going to do. I didn't know who I was going to. All of a sudden it just came to me, and I was like, you know what? One of my favorite books when I was growing up was the Marvel Illustrated swimsuit issue. Brian did the cover with She-Hulk on it. And I was like, I'm just going to go up to him and see if he'll do it. And he was doing these, and this was basically supposed to be a headshot color. And he ended up doing this wonderful torso or half body or whatever you want to call it. I mean, I came up while he was doing it because I walked away for a little while because he was doing some autographs and doing some other stuff. And I just checked in and I saw it all in yellow. And this thought popped into my head for like 2 seconds where I'm like, he does know that She-Hulk is green, right? And because I didn't know what he was going to do, but he said he had this idea, and this is what he came up with. And this was done at the show. As everybody knows, this got me my trophy from the comic art fans. The first time we did the awards with the trophy, this was the sketch of the year for that year, and rightly so for all the work that he put into it. And Brian told me when I spoke to him at OAX, I had a wonderful conversation with him for about 45 minutes. And he said, I drew this because this is what people would see if they were walked up to She-Hulk.
That's great.
She's like 7 feet tall, and this is what you would see. You would see her, from underneath. You'd be looking up, she'd be looking down at you. And yeah, it's amazing. And it's one of my favorite pieces of my collection. And I'm a huge She-Hulk fan. And this piece definitely has a place of honor.
You did very well. And
all I'll say to anybody else is, if you're ever getting anything from Stelfreeze, get it in color. Don't go black and white. You just got to go. You got to go all in.
Well, I did ask for something at OAX. I didn't make his list. Unfortunately, I got on his pre-con potential list, and, but it was too late. I should have done it early. But enough other people picked up stuff at OAX from Brian. So there will be other shows.
Always.
All right, now we got some Andrew Robinson.
Yeah, this was a Weatherman variant cover. I honestly was not hugely familiar with Andrew's work. I blame this purchase on Mr. Michael Benham, who was at Baltimore and we were walking around together, and he said you got to look at Andrew's stuff, and I was flipping through, and he had just incredible pieces, and this was the one piece that I just really was drawn to. It was also the only piece that didn't have a price tag on it. And so when I asked him, how much this was, expecting it to be similarly priced to everything else in his portfolio, it was significantly less expensive. And I was like, well, I have to buy this now. And I love it. What you're looking at, it doesn't really do it justice. It's fully painted. The colors just pop off of the page. I've tried to take other better scans and get better pick. I can't, honestly, you have to see it in person to really appreciate it. And it's a beautiful piece. And this, got me to read The Weatherman, which I was, once again, I'd heard good things about, but never read before. And it's a really unique story. And he's done some covers for it. The interiors are great. Mateo Scalera has done some other work for covers for it, and it's a really good read. And I don't read a lot of modern books, but when something jumps out at you interestingly like this did, and I just love it. I love the little rat beast. I love the kid on top of him. It's just a very fun piece of artwork.
I'm not familiar with the title. I hate to say it.
Listen, I wasn't either. So check out The Weatherman for anybody out there.
Weatherman. All right, I'm going to have. Yeah, you've convinced me.
Add it to the list.
As did Andrew Robinson. Where's Jason when we need him?
Yeah, this was another one where Bocello was just doing a list a lottery at shows. You basically wrote down your name and phone number and threw it in a fishbowl, and once a day he pulled a name out of there. And I was walking around the show and I got a text, and I swear I thought it was one of my friends who just texted me from somebody's phone to just fool with me and tell me that I won. And I went over to him and he said, nope, you won. And I gave him a choice. I said, I would love to have a Magic or a Savage Land Rogue. And he had told me that he told me he wasn't going to do them here. He was going to do them at home after the show, but he was going to mail them out, and he didn't want to be paid until it was done. And I was like, oh, well, that's great. So, it was a couple of weeks after the show, and then he messaged me, and he actually had done this piece before, and he had said, if you want me to do a new one for you, I will, but I have this piece that if you want, this can be your piece. And I said, yeah, I mean, come on, tentacles, right?
Scott Wingo's favorite.
Yeah, listen, it's got 10 little cherubs, little devil cherubs in the it's just incredible. And this is on a comic book backing board, because this is how he did these sketches. This is not, it's not huge. I wish I had an 11x17, but it just presents the same. He was able to squeeze in so much detail and work into such a small space, and it's just an incredible piece. And even though Bocello was working on stuff when I was collecting back in the 90s, and he was doing Generation X and other stuff, I really didn't know much about his work until getting back in to comics. So I loved his style though, and like I said, I was lucky enough, and I made a lot of people at that show that I was traveling around with very jealous.
Oh heck yeah! I mean, it's funny because Chris does like to draw on backing boards. I mean, if you ever pick up something from eBay or other places, he does tend to draw on backing boards. Just something about I assume just the gloss on the page on the board or something that appeals to him. But because I've owned a few pieces by him, and both times they were always done on backing boards. But hey, more power to him. I don't, if you don't mind the size. I mean, they always come out fantastic. But yeah, you lucked out on this one.
Oh yeah, I was, like I said, I mean, the fact that it was pre-done, and I can't imagine, he didn't say somebody didn't want it, but I can't imagine he just did this and then didn't offer it up to anybody. So whoever turned this down, thank you if you did, because I'm more than happy to have it in my collection.
All right, well yeah, I'm envious. If Jason were here, he'd be envious.
And this, yeah. So all right, so this is another piece. And when I bring up a lot of these pieces, I brought them up for different reasons. And I happen to love, I love like World War II, like propaganda art. I think it's like really cool. And even though there's giant robots in the middle and a giant, it's got the teddy bear with the sickle and on it. And it's got just this, it has this feel of like a World War II propaganda poster. And I'd been looking at this in Essential Sequential had it. And I'd been looking at it. And I had a couple other pieces by Matteo, but I really wanted this piece, but I didn't. And then they had a 20% off sale. And I was like, done. I'm like, I have to pull the trigger on this piece now. I'm never going to get a better deal on it. I'd even seen it at San Diego and tried to make a deal for it, and they didn't do any deals at the show. But once again, I got, they had a deal last year or the end of that year, and for the 20% off, and I pulled the trigger, and it's just a beautiful piece, and it's just such great work, and it's from a French comic. It's I actually had a friend who looked it up and read it after I pointed it out. Les Divisions de Four. Fear. I don't know what it is. I haven't read the book. I don't know who did the interiors. I don't think that he did the interiors, but I just love it. I love how it looks. The setup for it, just the like I said, everything about it just has that feel.
No, it's beautiful. Absolutely. And isn't it funny sometimes how those sales actually get you to pull the trigger finally? Like, I think I saw Michael Lark over at Splash Page is doing like buy two, get a third piece of equal or lesser, value for free.
Right. Yeah.
I think he even did one with Sean Phillips art around the time OAX was going on. Because I know that's around Sean's birthday or something like that. And every end of January, they've been doing a Sean Phillips. That one probably the same, like buy two get one free or something. But it's true. There's that piece of art that I had had the work done on it by Von Hawk. That was a piece that I had looked at for 5 years, and every time the woman did a 20% off Christmas sale, I'd think about it, and I wouldn't buy it. But it took me 5 years finally to go after that 20% off sale for me to pick it up. But
sometimes that's all it takes. And there's so many different ways to get art, and there's so many, and that's what I like to point out. Like when I'm showing some of this stuff, I'm showing all the different ways that I've gotten great pieces in my collection. And like I said, sometimes, and it doesn't, it doesn't seem like a lot, but you have to draw the line somewhere. And if you don't ever, if you say, oh, well, it's just 20%, but it's like, 20% can be a lot of money. And it's the difference between maybe having enough money to get a different piece of art or something else. So it's like, we can always say that we're always willing to spend more, but if you keep pushing the line, that's when you start to get into trouble. So it's like, all it takes is sometimes just a little nudge down, and you're like, yeah, I can afford that. Sure. Mm-hmm. I can make it work.
Well, I know what this next one is. Nice John Byrne piece. Look at that.
Yeah, that's this one has a long story. So this piece, it made me, and I've told this story before, and I actually just told it to Ken Lashley when we at OAX, because we were talking about Byrne stuff, and so I told you that earlier that John Byrne at conventions, he would do auctions for his stuff. So he would always, draw it. This is 11 by 14. He'd just draw whatever he wants, and then he'd hold it up to auction. Well, I had traveled to Mid-Ohio Con with several people, and everybody I was with, we all wanted pieces. Everybody had gotten pieces. I was waiting for a She-Hulk to come up, maybe making like a little verbal suggestion every once in a while. And then finally he got around and he drew a She-Hulk, and I was like, all right, I'm ready. I got every cent I got. I don't even remember how much money it was. It probably wasn't much. It was probably like, back at that time, maybe $150 was like a ton of money to spend for something. And I think I said $150, when he started the auction. And then one of the people I traveled with, who, mind you, had already gotten a piece, outbid me. And so I looked at him, he goes, I like it. And I'm like, because he knew how much money I had, and he knew I didn't have any more money to spend. And I was like, oh my God. I mean, I did end up getting another piece. I got a Wonder Woman, but I always wanted that She-Hulk. It was one that I had been waiting for and, really, really wanted, and I told this story when I actually saw the person who had outbid me. I saw him at a convention, and we were talking in front of Walter Simonson, and Walter Simonson said this great line. He says, there are no friends at the pass. Meaning And it just always stuck with me. If only one person can get through, there are no friends. And that's what happened. And how I ended up getting this piece was the person who was selling it, who I'd actually known, who used to travel at shows back then. He put a post up on Sketch Prices, and he put this up for sale. But Sketch Prices is not a sales group, so it was only up for about 2 minutes, and then it got pulled off by one of the moderators. So nobody else saw it, and I managed to screenshot it, and I immediately contacted the seller, and I bought it from him. And it was a 30-year journey getting this piece. And I'm 99% sure this is the same piece that I got outbid for 30 years earlier at the show.
Funny.
So it's and this was one of those things where it met me with the biggest high in the world, and about a week and a half later I had the lowest low, because I was like, that's it, I'm done. This is the only piece that I need. This is the last piece that I need. I'm finished. This is it. And it literally made me so depressed, because I was like, what does a collector do when there's nothing left to collect?
Very true.
And
I think you figured a few things out, though.
Yeah, well, I did. Then like I said, it took a little while. I wiped myself off and I got the dirt off me, and I picked myself up, and I said, you know what? I'm going to pivot a little bit. I'm going to start collecting published art from artists and books that I treasured, and then once again, it goes from there. And then I found new meaning and stuff, and I started collecting. But that's what this piece means to me. It was the pinnacle of my collecting. It was a 30-year journey, and it's She-Hulk by probably She-Hulk's most famous artist. So.
Well, I'm glad it made it to your collection after all that time.
Absolutely. So happy to have it. And it's definitely not going anywhere.
No, it should not. Not after that journey. But hey, Kurt Swan, Superman here.
Yeah. So this piece was my first San Diego Comic-Con was back the year before last. And I went to Mike Berkey, and he had a couple pieces. I did a little trade deal, and I owned a page by Kurt that was, what I loved about this was it's inked by Dick Giordano. So you can see the pose, you can see the bones of like Kurt Swan, but it has that soft edge that you can see that Dick did and softened it up, because you can totally see where Kurt was coming from, but it definitely you can see where Dick totally his line work softened out a lot of Kurt's stuff on it. I just, I love when great artists work together and they complement each other. So I saw this piece. I don't know what it was from. I think it was published. I've been looking for it since I bought it to see where it was published. I like to think it was maybe like an anti-garbage ad or something somewhere, but it's great. These kids, somebody told me they look like Thundercats. Yes. #1 Marvel fan. That's what somebody told me, that the expressions on their faces and that's what they look like. So it's a pretty cool piece, and it's just great to own an exceptional page by two masters.
No, it's fantastic. And you got something good from Berkey.
I did.
Now, tell me about this piece.
So this piece, all right. So I'd given you a different piece to show off because I was waiting for this. So this piece, I just got finished yesterday, and it's a John Buscema. So I have to explain that a little bit. So during a Dueling Dealers one night, Mr. Anthony Snyder had 2 unfinished 11x17 pieces by Mr. Buscema. He had an Incredible Hulk piece, and he had a Thor piece. And I saw these, and I messaged Ken. I was like, these are really cool. And I was getting ready to type to do an offer for the Thor. And my partner, Mr. Ken Carson, made a deal for both and got them both before I could even get my offer in. And I messaged him, and I was like, you better sell me that Thor. And he very much agreed to do it. He ended up getting the Hulk, and he ended up getting Klaus Janson to finish the pencils on his Hulk piece, and it turned out insanely great. I wanted the piece to be as pure John as I could, but I really wanted it to be finished. John had done the face, he had done all the pencils, he had inked several parts of it, but he didn't ink it all. So I knew this guy who's a pretty good artist, and his name is Bill Morrison. And he's a very good mimic. He's a very good at drawing in other people's styles. And I asked him if he would be willing to finish this piece and complete it in John's style. And he did. He's had it for a while. He's had it for probably over a year. And I put him on a deadline for this show. And I said, if you finish it before this show, Bill, I'm going to show it off. And he came through last night, and he sent it to me, and I could not be happier with how it looks. It's exactly how I would envision it. And when I post it, and I haven't posted it on CAF yet, once I get it, I'll post it on CAF, and I'll post the pencils that were the original pencils on it. But like I said, the face was done, and all of the pencil work was underneath there. The rocks were maybe a little bit rougher than they are, but he looked at so much research material to do this. So this is literally the only person that's seen this is me, Bill, and Ken. So you guys are the first ones that get to see this. And
I can tell you that when I saw the pencils for this, I wanted them too. So I think he did a great job with it. When I saw him, I didn't know what to make of it. What would you do with them? But you guys did. I mean, this is fantastic. I haven't seen the Hulk, obviously, but this is great. And I'm sure Bill was pretty honored to get the opportunity to work on something like this.
He was very hesitant. He had to psych himself up to do it because he's like, "You sure you don't want me to do blue line?" And I'm like, "No, I don't like." And that's the thing is, I'm like a lot of collectors. Everybody has their way that they collect, and I don't. I'm not a big blue line person. I like to have, if I don't want it to be inked, then I don't get somebody else to ink it on another piece of paper. If I want it to be inked, it's probably because I'm putting a team together or I'm doing something to finish it off with. How much? I don't remember how much I paid. Yeah, that's not going anywhere, buddy. I don't know how much I paid Ken for it. I don't remember exactly, but Bill was nice enough to do the inks for me. I
think free. Ken got the pair for a price, but I think when Anthony initially had them, he might have had them both for like $2,200 or something like that, or maybe it was maybe $1,900. I can't remember, but I think Ken gave an offer for the pair, and Anthony sold it. But yeah. And it was a little rough, but you knew what it was. I mean, it was clearly he had like I remember there was enough of that thing done that Thor looked great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, and yes, but no, you got to keep this one forever, especially now that Bill did.
Oh no, this is going in a frame. It is going on the wall. I literally already have a frame purchased for it. And I want to throw this out there to anybody who does not know this. For those of you who like to get 11x17 stuff framed and don't want to pay to have a framer do it, Target sells 11x17 frames with mats that work perfectly. You can't find these at Michael's, but for some reason Target sells them. And it's one of the miracle things that I found, because I do have only a few pieces that are framed, but finding that size frame that's pre-done is very hard to find. So I'm sharing that with everybody who's here tonight, that Target does sell matted 11x17 frames, so you can frame it up yourself and don't have to spend a fortune to go to a framing shop. Although they do nice work, and they probably put better mats on it than the standard white and black.
Well, sure. Hobby Lobby has them too, though. I mean, I have seen that. Yep, they do. But yeah, anything that can save time and a few dollars and still be decent is worth it. But now,
I think they're $30. So there you go, guys.
Here's your Garcia Lopez piece that you didn't get Wonder Woman, but you got a Who's Who page here.
Yes, yeah, this is a double. It's a double. I wanted a double whammy because there's two grails that come out of this, is because I really wanted a great example of Jose Luis Garcia Lopez's work, and I'd owned sketches and I'd had some other stuff, but I never really had that piece. And I remember I was thinking when I was doing a couple jams, I was thinking how cool it would be to do a jam of like not sidekicks, but like the peripheral people around superheroes, to get like a jam with like Jimmy Olsen and Alfred and like Steve Trevor or something. So you could do like almost like a third tier, Trinity. And I remember when I was researching that, I typed in Jimmy Olsen and this image popped up. So when I saw this at Bashara's booth a couple of years ago at Heroes Con, I was like, wow, I really want this. And I was only at Heroes for one day, and it just stuck with me. And the next day I messaged a friend who was still at the show, and I said, "Hey, I'm gonna wire Ken money. Can you just get the cash from him and go buy this for me before it's gone?" And he did, and I love it. It's and I've always wanted a page from Who's Who. You know, next on my list is to get a page from the Marvel Universe of a great piece. But this one definitely hits everything. It's just, I mean, the plaid jacket and the, just the three images of Jimmy, and then you get a nice Superman just tossed in, And I actually brought this to OAX and I showed it to Jose and I got a picture of him with it. Yeah, it's another one of those pieces that's just great and is going to be completely part of my lifelong collection.
That's beautiful. Bashara spreading the love. He always brings good stuff. I would like this brought to OAX because he does always like bring stuff that's not on his website that he just pulls out of the vault. That's part of his marketing. His approach to going to shows is everyone knows I've got at least 2 portfolios that they've never seen before.
Yep.
And that's how I get them to come in. That's how I got my first the piece that you guys helped me find.
Yes, the Warner Roth. That's right.
The Roth at and it was fairly priced.
Yeah, it was. And because I had told Jason, I was like, because he was flipping through that portfolio with it in there, and he kind of had his hand on it, and he wouldn't flip the page. And I was like, and I said, if as soon as you let go of that page, I'm going to buy that. And he's like, but I think Bill. And I was like, oh my God, you're right. Bill has been looking for a Warner Roth, and I was like, message him. I was like, let him over. And I was totally, like I said, if you didn't want it, I was going to get it. But I was so happy that you finally got your Warner Roth page, because mine would have just been an impulse buy because it was so, like, I thought it was very appropriately, if not low priced, that I was going to pick it up. But I'm so happy it went to you.
Oh yeah, that the Professor X page. I mean,
yep.
I couldn't have been happier to get that. Let's see. Oh, this was a fun one.
Yes. So this is great. So this is another wonderful story. So I was at Jerry Ordway's table like 6 years ago, and Spencer walks up to him with this page, and he says, Jose Luis Garcia Lopez has had this page for 30 years. It got misdelivered to him when it was supposed to come to you, and he's had it to give to you, and it just, through life, it had gotten misplaced and moved aside and done. And finally, he knew you were going to be where he could get you the page. So Spencer said, so he wanted you to have the page. So as soon as Spencer hands it to Jerry, and Jerry hadn't had it in his hand for more than 2 seconds, and Spencer goes, "Oh, and if you want to sell it, I already got 2 buyers." And Jerry, without missing a beat, goes, "Well, I haven't seen it in 30 years, so I think I'm going to hold on to it for a little while." And I just thought it was the coolest thing. Jerry inked it. He didn't draw it. Ed, oh God, it's going to escape me now. I'm not even going to remember. Last name starts with a B. Yeah, somebody's going to know who the penciler was on this. I'm sure it's on the comic art page, but it's just gorgeous. It's a convention. It's LuthorCon 3, and it's got a huge Lex Luthor, and it's got Superman, and it's got a kid dressed up like Luke Skywalker, and a very Bolland-esque King Arthur walking the opposite way. And there's people wearing Mickey Mouse ears, and the guy in the bottom right corner has a pin that says "No mutants" or "Death to mutants" or something. I can't read it because it's right there, but it's got little robots on it and people going through comic books, and it's got a registration desk, and it's literally got everything that you could want in a page, and it's a huge splash, and I just love it. So basically I saw him the next year at the show, and I said, "Hey, I was here when you got this page. If you ever want to sell it, I would be interested in buying it." And I did that, and I did that for years, and I emailed him. And finally, I'd emailed him last year, probably months before Terrificon. And then finally he looked at his emails, and he said, "You know what? I think if you want to get it, I think the last price that we agreed on was so-and-so, I'll sell it to you for that price if you still want it." And I immediately was like, yes, I still want it. Done. And so I picked it up from him at Terrificon last year. And it's, like I said, it's one of those things where persistence pays off. and it's an incredibly beautiful piece, and it's just got so much history with it, and the detail that's in it, you can't even express. I have it on my CAF. Anybody should just, if they want to check it out and blow it up and look at all the details, because it's amazing. And just to think that Jerry did this with a pen, just getting in there, and it's nuts. So I love it, and it's on my wall, and it's another one of those pieces that's never going anywhere.
Correct.
Thank you, Bartello. Thank you.
Man. So no, that is great, and a good story on that one too.
Mm-hmm.
Many artists probably had similar stories where the wrong art went to the wrong artist. I mean, just the way art was returned back in the days was pretty haphazard. So it doesn't surprise me that something like that happened. It probably happened a lot.
Yeah, and the surprise is that it made its way back. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. This is a nice page, but Robin's in trouble on this one.
This was a kind of a grail piece for me. I've been looking for a Jim Aparo Batman page, but I wanted it to be from this particular time period. I didn't want a Brave and the Bold page. I didn't want something from a later time. I loved this Starlin writing, Mike DiCarlo inking, Aparo pencil Batman page with that great, just that Aparo triangle nose that he did so well. And just this one, I mean, it's just got everything you could want in a panel page. It's got a villain. That's Scarecrow laying on the table. It's got Alfred. It's got the Batcave, Batman and Robin, and just everything. And I was so happy when this popped up and that I was able to get it, because I was so worried that I wasn't going to be able to get it, because it popped up on a Facebook sales group, and I messaged the person and I didn't hear back for hours, and it was grueling waiting those hours, just because you knew they were just going to go, oh, I'm sorry, it's already gone, or it's already sold. And apparently the guy had just gone out to dinner and just didn't take his phone with him. And he messaged me back, and I just immediately pulled the trigger on it, because it's just exactly what I wanted. Short of having a page from the Death in the Family, series, the actual 4-issue limited series, this is just perfect. It's everything that I ever could have wanted in an Aparo Batman. Aparo is my Batman artist. I have a full run of every Batman book that he did, and this is. It is definitely a grail for me.
Marcus is giving he loves the Comics Den OAX videos so much that he's quoting the people. It was a bunch of new collectors really who were at OAX, and that was kind of cool. That OAX brought some people in that had never really seen that much original art, and it was a eye-opening experience for them. They walked away with a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I watched a couple of those Comics Den videos. Yeah, very well done.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I got to live vicariously through their eyes. But hey, this is a great piece. Obviously, Romita Senior.
Yes.
And I mean, it's so obvious that it's Romita Senior, but boy, it's great. I love it.
Oh yeah, this is 100% Romita Senior. This book, he had done. Gil Kane had done some of the pencils, and he had inked him. But some of the pages were just done by Senior, and this is one of those pages. Berkey had offered this up. I think it was maybe on a Dueling Dealers, and nobody had pulled the trigger on it. And then I tried to make a deal for it, and we couldn't come to the right price for it. And then before I knew it, it was sale was pending, and it was on hold. And I know what on hold means. With Berkey, it means somebody's making payments on it, or it's done, it's over. And I felt so disappointed that I didn't get it. And then by a miracle, it popped back up as for sale. So I don't know what happened with the other buyer. I don't know what was going on, but they I guess they let go of it. And it's a beautiful page. It's got Cap in every single panel, and the masked character in the bottom panel is the Red Skull. You find out on the next couple pages. So it's pretty much got everything you could want. I love that panel that you have like blown up there on the far right. It's like all of those like dot lines. It's a razor blade, and John did this all the time to add texture, because they didn't have any different color breaks in this, and he wasn't using Zipatone. So that's how you got it to do that sort of slash. He would literally take a razor and slice the page a little bit to give it that jagged, and you can actually feel it on the page. It makes it very textural. It gives it a little more. And I was never more disappointed than when this was selected to be on one of your updates. But it was one of the updates where you didn't do an update for whatever reason. So you ended up
no.
in week. And I was like, no,
That almost never happens. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, listen, it was fine. I really just hated myself for not waiting longer to post it. And I forget what reason it was, but there was definitely a reason why you
I
wouldn't.
can't imagine why we would never end the show with a pick.
Maybe I don't know if what was going on that week, but something was going on where you couldn't do a show that Thursday night. Something I forget what it was. Maybe it's a holiday.
Yeah, that might have been like I was in Ohio or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Well, sorry, man.
No. Listen, it's getting its due, and I just love that everybody can see it. And I actually purchased this last year on John Romita Sr.'s birthday, is when I paid for the piece. And then, of course, shortly after in June, he passed away, and it's very, very sad. And I'd worked with his son doing conventions the year before, and we talked about this because his father had dementia at this point, and my mother has dementia, so it was something that we, I was able to, and I haven't talked to John in person since then, but I've sent my condolences, and I've asked Spencer to relay them after it happened. And like I said, I did have the pleasure of meeting him once, and he was just a lovelier gentleman you won't meet. So very sad loss, but very happy to add this piece. If you can't have a Spider-Man, then you can. This is definitely one that holds that special place for me.
Heck yeah. No, it's great. I liked it when we showed it the first time on Dueling Dealers. So no, I'm glad it ended up with you.
Yeah, so am I. So this is another one of these sort of modern kind of graily pieces for me, because this was from the Flashpoint miniseries. It's from the first issue. It's a double page splash. So this is, I guess, maybe Jordan would call this a first appearance page, because this is from the first issue of this series, where you see the alternate Batman, who is Thomas Wayne, from the first issue he premiered in, and it's got these alternate versions of the sort of this ragtag group that are trying to defeat the the Amazons and the Atlanteans, who are battling in this alternate reality. And so you get the Shazam kids, and you get Captain Cold and Sandman, and all of these, you have the other Green Lantern, Mansoor, and just and it's a double page splash, and it's birth page. There you go. And this is just, it's incredible. And this was one of those series that got me back into comics and back into reading. And anybody who's, familiar with anything in the last, 10 years of DC, this Flashpoint series has been redone in the Flash movie that came out last year. It was done in an animated movie. It was done in the Flash TV show. It's just, I think of it as sort of being like the Infinity Gauntlet of the DC universe. This and Crisis, I think, are probably two of the definitive storylines in DC. And I own more than a few pages from Flashpoint. I almost pick them up so often that whenever anyone's offered for sale, I get tagged in those posts quite often. But this was, I actually picked up from the inker, Sandra Hope, and so it was not nearly as expensive as it should be, and I was very happy to get it and add it to my collection.
Well, congratulations.
Thanks.
I think we have one piece left, and it's a Jim Lee.
It is a Jim Lee. Yeah, this is a piece that's pretty famous around the Sketch Prices group. Gilbert, who runs his Discord page, he offered up some pieces that were started during the 2020 60 for 60. These were some stuff that he started and then went another direction and was doing other stuff with it. And he had this piece. And as most people know, this originally wasn't a Wolverine. It was actually Black Adam. But he hadn't really he'd done the figure, he'd done that pose, and he had done the face, but not really completely. And I saw it and I was like, that's a Wolverine pose if I ever saw one. And I messaged him and I said, hey, would Jim be able to, for an additional charge, would he be able to add, the Wolverine, turn it into Wolverine? And I know everybody knows how much Jim's charging for his pieces. This is 9x12. I think he just did an op that it was between $9,000 and $15,000 for finished, once again, finished inked pieces this size. So when I saw this piece and the price was significantly less than that, even with the price that I paid, and Jim agreed to turn it into Wolverine, and he added the X belt and did the face, and but it was funny because when he gave it to me, he didn't do the claws. And I was like, man, I really wish he'd done the claw, And so I just kept messaging Gilbert. And then the last time I was at a show where Jim was going to be at, I messaged Gilbert and asked if Jim would be willing to do it. And I gave it to him. And
sketch. That's great. You didn't want an unfinished sketch, so you actually got him to add the claws.
Yes, I got him to add the claws, and he did it, and it was so funny because Jim had actually said to him, because I paid to get an autograph to get in line to see him again, and I didn't want to hold up the line and didn't want to put him on the spot, and after he got it from Gilbert and he had done it, he said, "Oh, why didn't he just ask me to do this when he was in line?" And I was like, well, see, you never think it's going to be that easy. And I was trying to be respectful of everybody's time. And and I literally could have, and Jim and I talked, we actually talked about comic. I've got a picture I sent you for me and Jim talking about comic art fans, because I was wearing one of your shirts. Mm-hmm. And we actually had plenty of time because for some reason there was a hold up in the line behind me. And we had like 5 minutes where we just sat there and shot the stuff and talked. And
did he say how much he loves comic art fans?
He was asking about it. He was asking about you. I talked about OAX a little bit, and so maybe that's something you guys can work out in the future. But I put in all the good words for you I could. So I think he's familiar with the site and he knows it. And yeah, that's something you'll have to talk to him about. But I did my best. I tried for you.
All right. I think I know his rep, who's probably going to be at OAX in 2025. So yeah, maybe we can work something out.
Yeah, listen. Can you imagine? I
think that would be a little bit much. I think if you have Jim Lee there, the show would have a very different feel, I think. But not that it wouldn't be interesting, but that we might want to wait like 2026 maybe.
There you go. But yeah, so that piece was definitely a grail for me. I've always wanted to have a full figure. You got to have Wolverine if you're going to get a Jim Lee, I think, and that's so when that opportunity presented itself, I sort of made it happen and got it. And, some things morph into that. And some people are like, well, why don't you get Scott to ink it? And I'm like, I kind of like the pure Jim pencils on it. I kind of like it the way it is, but you never know. I'm going to be at San Diego this year. Scott's going to be at San Diego this year. Maybe I will break down and get it inked, but it's just beautiful the way it is. And I actually do not even have it in my possession right now, because I had to leave New York before it was done, and I had a friend pick it up, and I did not want it in the mail. So I just am going to get it from him when I see him. So it's not even at my house. So I'm just waiting to get it back in my hands with the claws.
Well, the only Jim Lee I've ever owned was a free sketch I got from him in San Diego, and I sold it.
Yeah, listen,
a Wolverine, I think actually on a backing board.
Yeah, I listen. Like I said, it's not even in my regrets folder because I don't have a picture of it. I owned an Uncanny X-Men page that he had done. It was nothing spectacular, but it was something that he had done. Yeah. I mean, like I said, if anybody is ever bored, you can just go through. I try to delete the stuff. I know people have different ways they like to do their calves, so I try to delete stuff when I see someone else has it in their collection. But if it's in a dead end collection somewhere and I've got it in a folder that says regrets, I still kind of leave it in there. So I have that regrets folder in my CAF. Anybody wants to see, you can see some of the incredible pieces that I was insanely dumb to let go. And it's a story for all of you to never part with some of these pieces that if unless you really need to, because sometimes they find their way back to you. Most of the time they don't. And if they do, they're going to be a lot more expensive than when you let them go.
Yes, so true. Well, Great stories and amazing collection. Here, Rick Welch.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't honestly. I didn't plan on keeping you up this late, Bill. I'm sorry.
No. Hey, 2 hours is a fine mark. I never like to see an interview go much longer than that. I think it's a fine point for us to hit. Fantastic show, fellas, says Jeff. Well, listen, I appreciate us finally having the time to sit down and do this after I thought we'd done it a couple of years ago, Jeff. I know you won't be a stranger on the channel because there's always something else we have going on. We've got the May Comic Art Live show, the 11th and the 12th. So maybe if there's any panels you and Ken want to, tackle with us,
sure, yeah.
I think
see if we can bring you a good interview. That's always fun to do something. It was very fun doing the one we did last time with Tom Grummett, and I got to the Brian Bolland was a great interview that you did with him that I was not able to be on, but I was very happy that you were able to do that with him. That was wonderful.
I'd like to do another one with him sometime. If it ever comes up. I was nervous as hell the first time. I was still pretty green back at that point in time, but I think I could handle myself a little bit better.
Yeah. I felt the same. Listen, I had invited him to be on that Zoom group with all of us, and because I had had his email for years, and I didn't expect him to do it, and he did. And I literally, I think I wrote down, like, I didn't want to not have anything to ask him. I wrote down pages of stuff to talk about, and I'm pretty sure that Larry came on and said that he wasn't a big fan of The Killing Joke, and I thought that was really funny. To just put that. He loved the art. He just the story. I'm gonna put Larry Tunn on check for that one, and
only Larry would tell Brian something like that.
But it was very amusing. But no, he's, like I said, every friend that I've made through this industry and through these groups and through the chat and everybody who supports 4C and everything that Ken and I do and everything that you do and all of this stuff. It makes for a great community, and I'm just happy to be a part of it.
Well, here, man. We all feel that way. So, all right. Well, again, this has been awesome, and we'll be doing something again sometime in the near future. See, Larry's sticking to his guns.
Listen, I knew he was. He is not a backpedaler. He is not. No.
Oh man. All right. Well, listen, everybody. Thank you for hanging out with us. We appreciate it. I'll be back tomorrow night with a regular episode of the Dueling Dealers with Mike and Anthony. So I'm curious to see what they're going to bring after being, I'm just curious to see if Mike comes back in one piece. He was in Colombia, so they may have taken a kidney or two from him before he made it back. But we'll find out and learn all about his wonderful, interesting international trip he's been on. So have a good night. We'll see you again tomorrow.